Welcome to a brand new week. It's IB Nation Sports Talk along with Vince DeDario, Sean Stires. Happy Cinco de Mayo, everybody out there.
For those who celebrate.
Yep.
Have you ever been a big Cinco de Mayo celebrator?
I have not.
Okay,
but,
fair.
You know, it's like St. Patrick's Day, but
look, I'll be honest about the Cinco de Mayo celebrations. When you're in school, it's a great excuse to not have Spanish class and have a celebration instead. So that's when I was a big celebrator because I'm all about not having class. But, other than that, I have never celebrated it outside of school. Although this is, by the way, for all of those who do celebrate, Teacher Appreciation Week. And so, therefore, I am being appreciated all week. And we had a taco buffet at school.
Ooh, little taco bar kind of situation.
Taco bar. So I feel like I did kind of celebrate today, depending on how you look at it.
We should have done that over the weekend. That would have been nice.
It was solid. It was one of those authentic, Mexican.
You still call yourself a teacher, by the way? Like you get in trouble for that?
Until I'm not on teacher contract, I will be considered a teacher. So, yes, I am still a teacher. Yeah.
All right.
In my eyes, anyway. So I still partake in all of the festivities this week.
Might as well. As well.
Absolutely.
We've got plenty we're going to get to today. We're going to start off before rapid fire. We've got a lot in rapid fire that we're going to get to. Some juicy stuff. We've got some recruiting stuff. There's some
good stuff in there.
There's some Quinn Ewers stuff that popped up.
Yes. You want to talk about a career like this.
I know.
Very interesting aspects of his career.
So as well. I mean, nobody really even talked about the fact that he sunk all the way to the
know.
Round.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, he was the one
I didn't even realize he had fallen that far.
He's the guy that was getting, $1 million coming out of high school. He was kind of the first NIL baby. Skipped his senior year of high school so that he could get the NIL, all of those different things, going to Ohio State, and 7th round. Like that was unexpected. I am very curious. Like, I don't know the ins and the outs as to why he dropped him. He's a talented quarterback. I don't think anybody would argue that fact. But yeah, he dropped like a rock.
He did. Absolutely. And again, it was like the only thing I remember of him from draft weekend was him and his parents sitting on that couch apparently all weekend with all the deer antlers and elks and everything on the wall in the background. Did you see any of that?
Well, I remember
apparently they're a big hunting family.
Well, the only one I saw with all the deer and crap in the back would be Loveland or whatever his name is that went to the Bears.
Oh, he had it too, huh?
Oh my God, massive heads of prey on the wall. It looked like Gaston from freaking Beauty and the Beast. It was like almost cartoonish.
Yep. Christopher with the reminder, Tom Brady was a late round pick. He went in the 6th round. I mean,
yes, he did, but he's still more
that's exactly right. Still more the outlier than the rule. Exactly.
That's correct.
It can happen.
It can
happen. Look at Brock Purdy.
That was going to be the next one out of my mouth.
Had a
but
nice career. So.
I feel like, Tom Brady and Brock Purdy should not be in the same sentence, obviously, except for the fact that they were both drafted low.
Yeah. You
know what I mean? Like,
unless you're our old friend Brent, the San Francisco 49ers fan who
don't get me started on Brock Purdy. Like, I think he's a serviceable quarterback in the NFL who happened to fall into a perfect situation.
Very good situation.
Some
would say he's your Patrick Mahomes.
Patrick Mahomes is a much better quarterback than Brock Purdy.
I'll say that. Okay.
Well, yeah, I'm going to admit that. I'll admit that all day. But Brock. I mean, I've seen Brock Purdy play in person. Wow, that's a lot of P's. I've seen Brock Purdy play in person, and I wasn't all that impressed with him then. And again, not overly impressed with him as an NFL quarterback. It just, he had so much talent around him.
I know.
I mean, you're handing off to arguably one of the best players in the NFL. You're throwing the ball to top 10 players in the NFL, whether it's the tight end, whether it's a wide receiver, that's a great spot to fall into. I'll just say that.
Chris with a reminder that Joe Montana was a late pick.
Just picking out Hall of Famers.
Wasn't he like 4th round or something like that? I mean,
I don't know.
Later than you, but
yeah, he wasn't a top pick.
By Vince's logic, like Joe Montana is nothing because he played for a Hall of Fame coach. I mean, what would Joe Montana be without Bill Walsh?
Not as successful, but
okay,
still very successful. He was a much better pro quarterback than he was a college quarterback.
Yeah.
Like people look back
like Patrick Mahomes.
Yes, you're right. You're right. Because look, Joe Montana was a good college quarterback. He wasn't anything special. Like people revere Joe Montana at Notre Dame because of what he did for the 49ers. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't coming out of Notre Dame and everybody was thinking that he was, the next coming of quarterback. That's why he went where he went in the draft and became who he became in the NFL. He was the 9th string quarterback at one point in Notre Dame. You know what I mean? So like, I feel like people look back at his Notre Dame career a little bit differently than what actually occurred. Is that fair?
Yeah. I can buy that.
So
I was just mostly giving you a hard time because your whole argument against Mahomes is, well, what would he be without Andy Reid? So
he'd be a serviceable quarterback in the NFL.
Well, I mean, if he had gone to the Chicago Bears, he might be on his 3rd team by now.
My point exactly. You just made my point for me. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you,
Lamar Jackson fell. He fell, but I think he still went at the end of the 1st round. So, there's no pity parties for Lamar Jackson.
I was going to look him up and see where he draft. Let's see, where was he at? Not helpful. Everything that just came up, not super helpful.
I believe it was it the 2018 draft?
Yes, it was the 2018 draft. 100%.
And he went... Where did he go? There he is. Last pick of the 1st round. 32.
He's still a 1st rounder.
Yeah.
Still a 1st
People didn't know what to do with him. People didn't know if he was a quarterback or a wide receiver. And obviously he needed a Harbaugh to figure that out, I guess.
So the quarterbacks that went ahead of him, Josh...
So can we say, what would Lamar Jackson be without Jim Harbaugh?
I would say, what would Lamar Jackson be without genetics? Because that kid has got some serious genetics. He went behind Josh Rosen at 10, went to the Cardinals. Let's see here. Josh Allen went 7 to the Bills. And good old Sam Darnold with the 3rd pick overall
to the Jets.
From USC to the Jets. And Baker Mayfield, number 1 overall to Cleveland. So
that was an interesting quarterback.
Yeah, it is an interesting quarterback class. Wow. Yeah.
All right. Well, we came here today to rank Notre Dame's top 20 defensive players.
Yes, we did.
We were talking before this started. We did offense last week, 1 through 20. Feel like defense was a little bit tougher to put the ranking together.
Yes. So for me, defense was harder, number 1, because they rotate so much, right? So there's a lot of guys that are going to be contributors on the defense that probably didn't make my list, to be perfectly honest with you. And so it was harder after the 1st pick. It was like, where do I go with number 2? Like I had to sit down and actually think about it. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of options and there's a lot of different paths that you can take with this whole ranking system. And I think it really does come down to, Sean, what you value most defensively as to how you're going to rank players.
That's a good point.
So I don't know. I'm very interested to see where you go with stuff. I know that my top 20 that I have written down in front of me is going to be changing as we go through this. Like I know I've got guys that are too low, and therefore I've got guys that are, too high. So,
and we do reserve the right after we rank them 1 through 20, we can each move one up. We can each move one down if we want.
I think we do a good job, but we'll see how this goes. We didn't have to move anybody last time.
We didn't move anybody last week. So I put the list up there on the screen so everybody can see it as we go along, if you're watching along. And I'm going to go ahead and get this started. You got the 1st pick last week.
Totally fair.
I'm more than willing, since you just said how hard it was to figure out who number 2 was going to be, to put the screws to you right away. And I'm just going to put Leonard Moore
Okay.
At the top of the list. Do you have any disagreement with that?
I have no disagreement with that. He was at the top of my list as well.
Okay.
So that was the easy, no-brainer number one guy.
11 pass breakups. Led the team with 11 pass breakups last season. Only started 10 games out of 16, of course. 6 games he didn't start, but he was still the guy at the top of the heap. Like just the season that he ended up turning in for a freshman who started off in reserve was pretty amazing, obviously.
Yep. So that was an easy one because
yes.
I completely agree with you.
Easiest one of the day. Everyone after that, this is going to get a little bit harder.
Yes. So again, it depends on where you want to go and where you lay value on the defense. But for me, it's kind of like baseball. You got to be strong up the middle. And I still feel like Notre Dame is very strong up the middle.
Okay.
And so I went with Drake Bowen here.
All right. You know what? We're 2 for 2. Yes. Yeah, baby.
Yes.
That's exactly who I would have gone with.
Nice.
As I did what I did, I did these like in kind of like pods of 5.
Okay.
The top 5 are fairly true to ranking, but again, like to the difficulty of like who exactly belongs in what spot. It's a little bit, again, it was a lot tougher, I think, than the offensive players.
It was, like I said, more guys contribute defensively than they do offensively. So you're going to have guys that aren't technically starters, right? That are rotation guys that play just as much as the starters.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the case on offense, right? We were dipping into the 2 deep of guys that might not see the field very often except for pop-up duty on offense. But defense, every single guy that I have on my list is going to play and play significantly.
Right.
So where do you put those guys? How do you value who goes where and, that kind of a thing? And I know I've left guys off who are going to play and play a decent amount. So that's where it gets interesting for me.
Okay. So we've got Leonard Moore at the top of the list, Drake Bowen at number 2, and that puts it back to me.
All right.
At number 3. I'll be curious what you think about this. I have a feeling we could be pretty on spot on with this one as well.
I see what you did there. A little KVA.
Yes. Kingston Viliamu Asa is my number 3.
Yeah, guess what? He was my number 3 as well.
All right.
That's who I had at number 3. So we're on the same page.
Maybe this isn't as hard as we thought it was.
Well, I think it's easier at the top than when you get down to the middle and the bottom. But
I would agree with that.
I think KVA.
Honestly, I think that these were the 3 easiest. I will say that.
That's fair.
Like whether or not you could probably argue, well, maybe KVA deserves to be ahead of Bowen, even though Bowen was a little bit more of a regular last year. They both obviously contributed significantly,
and by the end of the year, maybe that is the case. Yeah. But I think right now, going into the year, with the experience that Drake has, and he's a year older, he's been playing more. Like I feel like he belongs in one spot ahead of KVA right now. I think Kingston's ceiling might be higher, and maybe he reaches, starts to head to that ceiling throughout this season. But right now, going into the year, Drake gets the nod for me over KVA.
I would concur with that. Faux show. All right. So we've got the top 3 spots, and this is this kind of, to me, is where this really gets started.
Yes, it is. This is where it could get off the rails for me as well. Because I did take a little bit of a liberty here with my number 4. So right now, again, my 1, 2, 3 are exactly the same. And so I'm just going to keep going down my list here. I'm going to go to number 4. My number 4 is on here because A, played very well last year.
Okay.
B, brings a lot of leadership, in my opinion, based on what we saw in the spring, based on things that we're hearing. I think brings a lot of leadership to this team. And I saw you star the comment, and so that's where I'm going. I am going with the Don Schuler.
Ooh, okay. All right.
Wow.
And this is where we have our first discrepancy as well. Now, it's not a lot, but I do have him just a couple spots lower than number 4. But he's one that I definitely considered putting in this number 4 spot. And Werewolf says we might overvalue Adon Schuler because he played next to an all-time great. I mean, that's
Look,
true.
Yeah.
But he played really well himself last year.
Yeah.
Like, did anybody knock, like, I'm trying to think of a good comparison for,
playing next to somebody that's really good.
Yeah, I was going to say Kyle Hamilton, but I mean, obviously Hamilton, was the unicorn out there, and once he got past his freshman, like nobody was knocking Alohi Gilman because he was playing with Kyle Hamilton when Hamilton was a freshman.
Yeah,
I guess, but
I am, like I said, part of this is his leadership ability, and what I saw from him in the spring, bringing young guys along, getting everybody in the right spot, and again, being strong up the middle. That's a safety. Like you need him to be strong up the middle. And so that's why he landed where he did for me. I wouldn't have an argument as long as he's like in the top 6 area. So maybe it's a little bit of an overvalue, but I do take that off the field and on the field leadership part very serious. Like I think now that he's not in the shadow of Xavier Watts, he does have an opportunity now to show his personality and show his leadership in that secondary. He's the vet now. He's the vet in that secondary.
And even though he was playing next to him, I mean, they both had their own duties,
Right.
Like he still had 3 interceptions last year, which tied for second, Watts obviously had the 6, but he did his job very well last year. So, and the question is then, if you think Adon Schuler is too high at number 4, how many guys would you have ahead of him? Like how far are you going to drop him down? Because I think honestly, I had him at number 6. That's 6 or 7. 7 would definitely be my floor. Like that's the farthest I would be willing to drop him based on who I've got.
That's fair.
Here. But I think that there are arguments for again, like different guys, and different value and stuff like that. But I think that, like what we saw from him this spring, and I think you were touching on it, both the leadership and the play that we saw from him this spring. Like I don't think there's any reason to believe that there's going to be, like a huge drop off in production from Adon Schuler, because that room is so talented now.
It's so talented. I mean, look, we can nitpick on some of these guys and talk about things that they need to do better and all of that. Okay, cool. Like I think he needs to tackle better. Like he had some missed tackles that you would want him to make, right? So, okay, work on that. Get better at tackling. But like I said, from a leadership standpoint, from just a physical tools standpoint, I like me some Adon Schuler for sure.
Man, Werewolf says Gabriel. I'm sure. I'm guessing he's talking about Rubio might be ahead of Adon. I mean,
what has he done though?
That's my point. Like
issue there.
I think you've got a ways to wait on this list before you hear Gabe Rubio's name come. I think he's a good player, but to your point, Vince, what has he done so far to warrant being anywhere in the top 10? Like
that's tough.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this. He's on my list, but we won't be talking.
He's
about
on
him
the
for
list
a little while,
but it's going to be a little bit before we get to his name.
Yeah.
Okay, so Vince put Adon Schuler at number 4. That means it's my pick at number 5, and I'm curious to see what you think about this and where you have this guy as well.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Okay. I
got Mr. Traore
at
number 5, and I think I saw DK say earlier that if he would have been healthy, he could potentially warrant being number 2.
And I think that's fair. I think that is a fair assessment. I think he flashed, obviously, before he got injured. I think everybody was very excited about where his trajectory was and his path for last year. And then he got injured. And he didn't become an afterthought, because that's being silly. He's not an afterthought. But would he have continued to climb and get better and be the guy that he was flashing when he was flashing? I think that's a legitimate question that we don't have an answer to. Excuse me. And I think he's still in the top 5. Like that is still a very, very good spot to be. I think I had him at 6. So 5, 6, cool.
So we're one off.
That's fine by me. I went with somebody a little higher than him that I'll probably put at 6 here in a second. Just because produced more because he didn't get injured. Like that's, you know what I mean? Like I just need to see it a little bit. But I think he flashed with all the tools. But let's see what he's got if he can get through a healthy season.
Okay. All right. So 1 through 5 so far, we've got Leonard Moore, Drake Bowen, Kingston Viliamu Asa. Oops, and I accidentally added an extra S. Adon Schuler, Boubacar Traore. So that takes Vince to number 6. Who you putting here?
This is a stretch maybe for some people, and maybe this is a bit of a projection when I just said, we haven't seen blah, 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 blah. But this is where I'm putting Bryce Young.
Okay.
I think that he is poised to have a hell of a year coming off that edge. What he was able to do in special teams last year, what he was able to do in the limited amount of time that he got on the defense. It's very effective. It's very effective. And with more snaps, I think he is going to do even more. And I'm just excited that I get to sit and watch it live and in person. So that's why I have Bryce Young there.
I don't blame you. You've got him ultimately one spot higher than what I had him, but he was, like all these guys here were in my thought process for who's going to be number 4 behind the top 3 guys. And so I ended up with him just a little bit lower. And, fair point that Christopher's making, that we're assuming that these injured players are coming back healthy. I mean, we kind of have to.
Right.
We're going based on the talent, like the things that we've seen from them so far. And I mean, that is going to be a question for guys who tore their ACLs.
Sure.
Like just to what extent, will they be like typically once they get back on the field, especially an edge rusher, you're not going to let that guy back on the field if he's not 100%. You're not just going to let him, rip and go at it. So if he's on the field, we assume that he's 100%, like how much does he trust it, to get around the edge and all those different things. But there's no doubt just from a pure talent standpoint that Traore, when he is healthy, just the flash that we saw from him last year, that he's one of Notre Dame's, top 5 or 6 guys.
Yeah, so he's got so much talent in him. And I think, the comment that was made that he'd be top 2 if he was healthy all year last year, I think that's super accurate. You know what I mean? If he had the production behind the flash that we saw, then yeah, he would have been even higher than number 5. So I think keeping him at number 5 is, we both knocked him down because he was injured. You know what I mean? And he got knocked all the way down to 5. You know what I mean? So I think there's a case to be made for Boubacar to move up, but just need to see it. That's all.
My next guy, I'm wondering how controversial this could end up being.
Oh, here we go.
I'm wondering what you think of this, because we've got a corner, we've got 2 linebackers, we've got a safety, 2 edge rushers here in the mix. And so number 7.
Ooh, going Botelho.
I'm going with a 3rd straight edge rusher, Jordan Botelho at number 7.
Look, I think this is a very similar situation for me as Boubacar, as far as like he hasn't shown it for a full season. And up until last season, he was very, in my opinion, mediocre because of off the field stuff and not being consistent on the field. And then like the light switch went off last year and he was killing people. It was awesome to watch. Like it was really great. And then he got injured. And it's like, could that have lasted all season? It felt like it could have, but will it? Can he get through a whole season? I hope so. I really do. Because like I said, I think he's got the off the field stuff figured out, hopefully. And so now it's just, let's focus on football and see where it goes.
Exactly. That all seems to be behind him. And we didn't get to really see much of him this spring, but like a week or so ago, there was a video of him, like ripping through the stand-up dummies and, kind of doing some agility stuff, power and agility at the same time, so he looks like his recovery is going really well. And, again, like we've always known that Botelho has a ton of talent. It was the stuff that you talked about, putting some of that stuff behind him. He came in, was like a leaner, meaner version of Jordan Botelho last season. And that may be the thing for him now as well, after, getting back and getting that knee closer to 100% is just getting that conditioning back to where he was last year, because he was looking great before that injury. Both him and Boubacar.
Oh yeah, that was
both looking great.
Oh, it was a great duo. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I hope they can both be healthy, obviously, because that just ups the pass rush and, all of those different things. Here's the funny thing. I'll out myself on this as I was going through the list and I'm trying to figure out who to put where. And the way I've done both my offensive and my defensive list, as they come to my head, I write them down. You know what I mean? And I was kind of using the roster a little bit and, that kind of a deal. I was getting to the end of my list and I didn't have Jordan Botelho on it yet. And so I slotted him in at 19.
Okay.
And that was what I was referring to when we started. It's like, I know I've got certain guys too low that I'm going to have to move up. He was one of those guys. He's a top 10 guy on this defense. No doubt about it.
Absolutely.
So that was like I said, I'm going to out myself. Like, he's 19 on my list technically, but I knew I was going to be saying his name or waiting for you to say his name in the top 10 somewhere. So
DK says, glad they got hurt early, gets them back faster, and now have the experience in the backups. Yeah, I mean, games 3 and 4. That's like the only, as you spin it forward to this year, that's the only bright side is
up in the moment.
That much more, because look at Riley Mills as an example. Obviously, it doesn't impact this team, but it impacts his future. When you get hurt in December or January, obviously that's a lot tougher when you look at your next season. So. Tommy's asking if Christian Gray is listed yet. He is not listed yet. I'm curious to see where Vince goes next. Will it be Christian Gray? Who will it be at number 8 on our list of the top 20 defensive players?
So this particular player, I struggled a bit to decide where I was going to slot him. I just wasn't sure. Because there were some issues last year, but then there was also a lot of really good last year as well. And unfortunately, in this position, people remember the bad, right? And but at the end of the day, I still think Notre Dame's cornerbacks are a pair that can be reckoned with throughout the country. So this is where Christian Gray slots for me.
Boom.
Great.
Number 8.
Yeah,
I think that's a good spot for Christian Gray.
Yep, I think that's where he probably belongs. He's a top 10 player on this defense, no doubt about it. I think that, he's going to learn from his mistakes, right? I mean, he was still only a sophomore. You know what I mean? Like, you got to remember that the majority of the season, it was a true freshman and a true sophomore holding down the cornerback position. Then they did a really, really good job. There's a reason that also a really good player in Jaden Mickey decided in the middle of the year to transfer.
Right.
There's a reason, so yeah, I think Christian Gray is going to have I don't even want to call it a bounce back year because he didn't have a bad year. He just had a couple of bad moments. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And everybody remembers
it was mostly the same game. Yeah. Like, I don't even count that.
I know. It's
I just
look, Notre Dame doesn't win the Penn State game without him. Like,
I was going to say, he had 2 interceptions. They were literally 2, like the 2 interceptions that he had, one against Penn State, the other obviously against USC. Like, those are going to go on his career highlight reel. Those might be the 2 biggest. You can argue that those are the 2 biggest interceptions of the entire season for anyone. Now, Xavier Watts obviously makes his own case for the USC game, but those are 2 interceptions that any guy would love to have in his entire career. And he had them 2 months apart, something like that. Kind of amazing to when you think about it.
I know, right?
I guess maybe a month and a half, whatever it turned out.
I mean, it was the last game of the regular season and then into the middle of the playoffs. So
right. So, yeah, absolutely. Can you make a case for Christian Gray being even higher? Sure.
I think
but he's number 8 on this list. So it's not like he's, again, it's like the fall is relative, right? If you consider Christian Gray a little bit higher than this.
So, we got 2 more slots in the top 10. And I'm very interested to see kind of how this shapes out for the top 10 because the bottom 10, and that's a kind of a weird way to say it, 11 through 20, whatever. I think you could like make a case for any of my guys that I have like to go anywhere in that bottom 10. You know what I mean? Like I'm very curious to see which way we go with a lot of these. But anyway, Christian Gray at 8. What do you got at 9?
Man. So I've got 2 linebackers sitting here. And
yeah, you do.
I've gone back and forth on, who do I put ahead of the other?
I know.
Who's it going to be? Do you have the other 2 linebackers back to back as well? Do you have them coming up in these next couple slots?
I don't have them back to back, but they're in like the same pod. You know what I mean? Yep. So, yeah.
So I went with this guy, Jalen Sneed at number 9.
Okay. I have him above the other linebacker. So,
okay.
I do. Go ahead. You give your reasoning. Sorry.
I feel like obviously he had this wasn't even a field. Just like if you watched his play, you saw what he did. He had his most productive season at Notre Dame last year. Like all of the expectations that have been on Jalen Sneed finally came together as they used that linebacker rotation last year. And like he only had 2 quarterback hurries. Well, again, like one of those 2 hurries, assuming they, credited it right in the stats, was on the interception that Christian Gray had, that we talked about at the end of the Penn State game, So, yeah. So I think that Jalen Sneed, I'm pretty confident in putting him here at number 9.
I was willing because a lot of people are saying that, Osbury should be ahead of Sneed. And look, I get it. I understand that. And I don't know that I would even given a whole lot of pushback. It so happens that I had Sneed ahead of Osbury because of the experience portion, the experience factor. It's not one starting over the other or anything like that. I still feel like in order for Jalen Sneed to be the most effective, he's a package player still. That's me. I am not a fan of him starting next to Drake Bowen. I was not a huge fan of that. Now they had limited numbers in the spring and all of those different things. And I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen. I don't think that's where he's going to be the most effective. I think he's going to be the most effective coming in, rushing the passer, doing some different things off the edge, things like that. I think that's where he can be the most effective, getting in the backfield and creating chaos, right? Yeah. I think Jaden Osbury is more of a guy that can come in and play linebacker, right? Not necessarily just a package situation. The problem is that room is stacked right now. And who are you taking off of the field to put these guys on the field? You know what I mean? Like there will be times, obviously, that Osbury and Sneed are on the field and all of those things. So are you taking Bowen off the field? Are you taking KVA off the field? Because they're really only going to run with 2 backers unless they're running against triple option. So, what does that look like? So I give a lot of credit to the defensive staff at Notre Dame for finding a role for all of these guys because there's a ton of talent on this depth chart at linebacker. And I think you could have gone either way with Jalen Sneed and Osbury. I just put Jalen Sneed ahead from an experience factor and like that.
Yeah, and I mean, when you watched him this spring, you could see a continuation of what we saw from him last season as well. Like just his awareness, his quick diagnosis of the plays and getting to where he needed to be. There was not nearly as much hesitation, / confusion, whatever you want to call it. I agree. Like it, by and large, his best role is still, rushing the passer, creating havoc in the backfield, that kind of thing. But like with the size that he's got to go along with it, I felt like he needed to be ahead of Jaden Osbury. I don't think it's going to be by much, but that's up to you now, who you put.
It is up to me, and I'm not going to go with Jaden Osbury.
Okay.
And again, it has nothing to do with anything. It's just the fact that I'm going to go with somebody who I think is going to have more of an impact on a regular basis. And maybe I'm wrong, but we'll see. And this one's going a little bit off the reservation because I think there's a lot of people out there that really like this guy or are really kind of like, when it comes to this guy. But I think he has shown that he can be a very consistent player for Notre Dame, even though I was a little bit shocked when they put him here at this position. And I am going to go with Josh Burnham
Ooh, okay.
And I think that this is controversial. This is a controversial pick, especially kind of having him round out the top 10. But I like his athleticism off the edge. I like some of the moves that I saw in the spring. He does a good job of just getting low and getting underneath the pads of a tackle. I think he's going to have a pretty good year. Now, he was able to have a good year last year because of all the injuries. Now, those guys are back. So what does that mean for snap counts and all of those kinds of things? But I like Josh Burnham, man. That kid is just a workhorse, man, and he will find a way to make plays. So that's why I've got him there.
You've got him a few spots higher than I would have. And I saw someone just asking, Christopher asking who the first defensive lineman will be. I assume he means like interior,
like defensive
tackles, because we've listed a bunch of defensive ends who obviously are technically defensive linemen. So
yes, they are. They're actually listed on Notre Dame's roster as DL.
This is interesting. Like, how many people are so high on Gabriel Rubio, a guy who really didn't even get to play until the end of the season after Riley Mills got hurt last year? But people, like Andrew was saying, he thinks he's better than both Snead and Burnham. Like, I like his size. I guess he was playing more than that, but I'm like significant, that's when his bigger opportunity came, was later in the season. I like his size. I like his toughness. He does some good things, but and good against the run and all those kind of things. But I just, as an overall player, I would still put Snead and Burnham ahead of Rubio.
Oh yeah, me too. Again, he's on my list. We're just not there yet.
Yeah.
Just not there yet. How much further down did you have Josh?
Let me see. Well, again, I didn't do strict
give or
rankings,
take.
But you've got him probably about 4 spots higher than what I had him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
At number 11, there's some newcomers to this defense who we haven't got to see yet, and we haven't heard any of the transfer guys mentioned yet. I did just see one of them mentioned in the chat, and that's who I am going with next, and that is the Alabama nickelback, Devontae Smith.
Okay.
Is where I'm going here.
I like that.
I think he's going to be – they've done so well going to the portal and getting these guys to play nickel. I mean, when you think about it, it's what, like maybe 4 years in a row now, something like that. They just pluck these guys out of the portal and plug them in there in the slot. And, I think that somebody was saying that, Big Jim was saying Devontae Smith isn't on the list yet. I think he would laugh at that. I think he expects to lead big time. Well,
that's great. I just haven't seen him play at Notre Dame in a golden helmet. He's on this list more so than anybody else on I think I know what he's going to do. It's projection. We just don't know. We didn't get a chance to see him. So I think he's going to be good. I think he's, slotted as a starting nickel, so he's got to be on this list. But
I think that, there's a couple different things. One, we talked about how tough it was to rank defense versus offense, which we did last week. 2, I think that when you look at some of these guys who are going to end up in these spots 12 through 20 here, think about how good this defense is and think about the talent that they've got on the defense now.
Right.
So it's somewhat relative in terms of, okay, these guys might be lower on the list, but you've got a lot of freaking studs on this list so far.
Yeah. Nobody would be telling any of these guys to jump into the transfer portal if they were on another team. So,
right.
I actually had Devontae Smith at 12. So in that neighborhood as you. So I have no bone to pick putting him in that spot because he's a starter. He's going to start at nickel. He's a starter, so he should be on this list in the spot that he is.
Salty wants to know, is Luke Talich's number going to be called in the next 5 or the last 5?
Great question. Guess we'll have to kind of wait and see. I don't want to give anything away.
Yeah, Luke Talich, really good player. So far, all we've really seen in terms of, how that translates to game day has been either blue gold game,
right,
or special teams during the season. So,
okay,
for the most part,
I got to pull this up because I just have a question for Time Cone. He says, does the 26 defense allow less points per game than the 25? Do you mean, does the 25 defense allow less points than the 24? Because you've got two variables in this question that I cannot answer. I have no idea what the starting defense is going to look like in 2026.
Exactly. We don't know what either is going to look like.
I mean, we can at least make an educated guess on 25, but not 26. So I just wanted to ask that question, man. That's you're asking for an awful lot of projection on that, if that's accurate. But anyway, so this is number 12 is my pick, and this is where I will put our remaining linebacker, and this is where I'll put Osbury.
Okay, and that's kind of what I was thinking next would be probably Jaden Osbury.
Okay, perfect. So we're kind of on the same page on that one. Osbury at 12, and again, he's not a starter. He's a rotation guy. I'm not sure exactly what his role is going to be. He is super talented. There's no doubt about it. But again, who are you taking off the field to put him on the field? I think he has an opportunity to obviously, have a big role against Navy. I think he's going to have a big role on special teams, all of those different things. He
very productive guy last year, though.
Yeah.
Top 6 in tackles.
Yeah. When he's on the field, he's super productive. No doubt about it. So he belongs on the list. I just think this is a good spot for him.
The Osbury slide has ended.
Yes, it is ended. He went with the 12th pick in the IB draft.
Sly Fox said, Will Pauling, I guess, will have to be in the top 11 on offense then, since 7 of his 9 catches against Alabama was against Smith.
Well, we did offense last Monday, and I don't remember where Pauling ended up at. So
I know he's on the list. Can't remember exactly.
He was on the list. Let's see. For me,
I've got it.
I had him. On my list, I had him at 14. So he was in that neighborhood, but I did not have him in the top 11 specifically. So,
Hang on a sec.
You looking it up where we ended up?
I'm trying to see. I know I saved the list. I'm trying to remember where I saved it. So, here it is. We had him at 15.
Okay.
Will Pauling.
So, hey, top 3 quarters.
Yeah.
So, all right, who you got at the lucky number 13 spot?
So Osbury is number 12. I got to cross him off.
Where are you going to go? There's a lot of projection here with the guys that are, I think, left on this list. Young guys that didn't play full seasons because they were young.
I'm going to go, if I can pull my master back up here, I'm going to go with another transfer guy and go with, going back to the Adon Schuler conversation and talking about the fact that you're going to lose Xavier Watts, who Schuler was playing next to last year. He's still going to get to, most likely, he's either going to play next to a very experienced Jalen Stroman, the Virginia Tech transfer, or he's going to get to play next to, some good young talent, whether it's Talich or Tay Johnson. So Jalen Stroman is who I'm putting on here. They were very confident in what he could do coming out of the transfer portal from Virginia Tech. Very productive guy. And so that's who I'm going with here.
All right. So, again, I'm going to out myself, and I completely forgot about Jalen Stroman as I was putting my list together. He ended up at 20 because I was like, crap, I got to get him on the list. And so he was one that I would have moved up. So I have no problem with him being there. I mean, right now, he is the in-pencil projected starter at the other safety position. So you would think that he should be on this list someplace, right? I mean, and maybe even higher than we have him.
Yeah.
But again, it's kind of an out of sight, out of mind situation since we haven't seen him do anything. I think he climbs this list if we see him in the fall. Is that fair?
Good chance. Yeah. Very good chance.
All right.
So what have we got left? 14 through 20 now.
Okay. Yep. 7 more guys to make this list. And as I'm looking at the list that I have, honestly, I think this, I'm going to stop yet another slide. And I think this is where I'll put Gabriel Rubio.
All right.
This is where I'll put him.
Caved into peer pressure.
I did a little bit. Obviously, he's on my list. He's kind of, I think I could make a case from anywhere from like 10 to 18, to be honest with you. And so he's going to be right in the middle there. I'm going to put him at 14. I think he is going to be a very important part of this defense because of his size and because of what he did at the end of last season. You know, all of those different things. Absolutely. Just need to see it for a full season. And again, everybody I'm going to name until we're done with this list, there's going to be projection involved. He's no different for me. There is projection involved when it comes to Gabe Rubio as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you expect him to have more of an opportunity now because of the fact that, you know, you lost a couple of old grizzled veterans. So there's going to be more of a chance. And, you know, again, like he did pretty much everything that you wanted to see as a run stopping defensive tackle.
Yeah.
Like, can he continue to add to that
right
now? You know, that he's going to have more opportunities this season. So I'm going to go with another interior guy here and go with
the Heinisch.
I'm going with Jason Onye.
Oh, go with Onye. Okay. Also on my list.
Yep.
All right. Very good.
I'm going to go with you know, and you know, even last year when he was still with the team, we weren't really seeing as much of him as I thought we were going to see from him. And, you know, the production was kind of sporadic. And, you know, that's somewhat similar to a guy like Jordan Botelho. It's, you know, just like the consistency is really what we've been looking for from him. I think adding that extra 15 or so pounds that he's got on his frame for an interior guy, like really seemed to help Jason Onye out when we saw him this spring. So like he could easily vault up higher on this list as well if he finally hits that potential ring that we've been looking for.
You know, obviously he wasn't on the team second half of the year, personal reasons, you know, all that stuff. And that's a lot to deal with coming back. I'm actually shocked that he's on the roster, but shocked.
I was a little as well.
Yeah. Based on everything that I had heard, I'm shocked he's on the roster, but at the same time, shocked in a good way because you're right. He put on that extra weight. He doesn't look like he's lost a step. He just needs to be consistent. And if he can do that, he's going to be an interior guy who's not just a space filler. He's going to be an interior guy who's making plays.
Right.
And that's what's exciting about the potential of Jason Onye. Like we've been talking about Jason Onye for 2 years now. You know, it was 2 springs ago that he kind of popped onto the scene. You know, he's a verbal guy and he was fun to listen to and all those things. And then the season rolled around. I was like, oh, where'd he go? Nowhere to be found. And then last year, it was more understood that he was going to be helpful. And then he was very inconsistent. And then he was off the team. And so now he's back on the team, had a good spring, put on the weight, didn't lose a step, in my opinion. And now we get to see what he's able to do with a full season and a lot more weight on his shoulders, no pun intended, because they are going to be counting on him to do some stuff in the middle of this defense. And so what does he do with that opportunity? I think that's why he's where he is on our list, because it's a giant question mark. But he's got all the tools. And if he's got everything squared away off the field and he's focused on the field, I think he can be really, really good. And he absolutely has the ability to climb up this list. But I think this is where he belongs for right now. I really do.
I don't disagree with any of that. So we went back-to-back interior defensive linemen there at 14 and 15. The pick is yours at number 16. Who you ranking here?
All right. So I could go in so many different spots here. I could go DB. I could go defensive line. That's it, because I'm not going to go with another linebacker. I'm going to go with the guy who has the most experience of the guys left on my list. Even though he's undersized, he's, the lunch pail guy. I'm going to go with Donovan Heinisch, and I'm going to get him on the list here. I think he belongs kind of in this neighborhood, kind of the final five. I think they put a lot on his plate last year because of the injuries, and I thought he answered the bell when he maybe wasn't quite ready to answer the bell. But he did. And so I give him a lot of credit for that. I'm wondering what his role looks like going into 25, and we'll have to see. But he's the kind of guy that no matter what you put on his plate, I think he's going to answer the bell.
Yeah, I wonder as well, especially when you bring in a couple of transfer defensive linemen whose names, by the way, we have not called on this list so far. And I see some people calling for Jared Dawson, the Louisville transfer. But, you look at a guy like Heinisch, still a little bit, on the undersized range at around 280 pounds. These other guys are a little bit bigger, and that's obviously a good sign. The fact that the fact that Jason Onye is tipping over 300 pounds now, and you have Gabe Rubio obviously over 300 pounds, and you've got more of these guys, over the 300 pound mark. So I think that is a good sign for the Irish. I just don't know exactly. I'll be honest, I didn't have Heinisch on my list.
But the way you were talking, that was going to be my next question. I was like, I bet he wasn't even on Sean's list.
And I do have this guy who, again, there's some clamor for him in the chat right now. Jared Dawson, the Louisville transfer. And I mean, obviously he does have experience, and people are saying, well, he's got more production than some of these other guys. I mean, it's hard to grade some of these interior defensive linemen because you're not just going to go straight off stats, right? Because if you're a nose or even a 3 technique, it's much more a lot of times about just, and you can apply this to Gabe Rubio as well. Just how physical can you be? Can you command blocks? Can you just eat up blocks and stuff like that on the interior and kind of let the linebackers, really hunt out there. And so I think, they brought Jared Dawson in for a reason. And I think that he's going to be a really good piece to this, but we just haven't had our eyes as much on Jared Dawson as some of these other guys so far, because, like for you specifically, like a guy like Donovan Heinisch as an example.
I'll be honest with you. He's not on my list because I forgot about him. Because
you forgot about a lot of guys, it sounds like.
Well, but at least they made it on the list. Like I completely forgot about Dawson as a transfer kid. I completely forgot about him. So he just didn't stand out to me during the spring, and so he was off my radar. I'm not gonna lie. So
no, and that's true. Like he did, I think that Jason Onye flashed more this spring in the chances we got to be out there than Dawson,
right?
For example, and that's why I have Dawson a little bit lower, even though we know he's done it before and he's got a ton of experience. We just didn't see him, do anything the way some of these other guys did when we got out there.
Absolutely. So he has an opportunity at 17 here to move up the list as well, depending on how things go. And maybe he moves up the list after like the first week of fall camp. Like maybe he starts to, really become a dude. But okay, he said he's top 10. He didn't flash at all in the spring for me. At all.
No, I agree.
We didn't see a lot.
Literally didn't see him do anything.
Right. So that hurts this ranking for me. Again, he as Time Cone says, he could be a baller. He could be. I just haven't seen anything in a Notre Dame uniform. I need to see it.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. We've got 3 spots left on this list, 18, 19, and 20. It's over to you with pick number 18.
So obviously I didn't have Dawson on my list. So I have 4 guys still on my list that I have not called their name yet.
Okay.
I'm going to get to say 2 of them, and I'm trying to decide which 2 I want to go with. I am going to go Luke Talich here, I think.
Okay. I like that.
I think that he is going to fight for a starting spot. I think right now that's Stroman, and I think that's fine because that's what you brought him in to do. But I think Luke is going to push for that starting spot, and at the very least be a rotational guy at that safety position. And I think this is his time to kind of shine a little bit. I don't know if they'll go to a 4-man rotation at safety or if it'll just be a 3-man rotation, but I think Luke has done enough up to this point to be in that conversation. So that's why I have Luke Talich here at 18.
I don't disagree with any of that. Like I think someone's, mentioned the fact that he did have that pick 6 last year. That was definitely, it's definitely the highlight of his career so far. And we saw him do some really good things this spring. I just is that going to translate now at this point? Because it is a much deeper, very, talented room compared to even 2 or 3 years ago. And for that reason, I've got another safety at number 19 in Tay Johnson.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
But again, I think, I think that, each of these two guys, there's questions about just how much we see either one of them because of the fact, if it is predominantly Adon Schuler and Jalen Stroman, and I saw someone say, well, Stroman, he wasn't out there in the spring either. Well, we know a little bit more about Stroman, because again, it's there's a difference in watching a safety play and watching a defensive tackle play, as an example, right? You can see the difference because of the space that a guy like Stroman is going to cover, and they brought him in for a reason. But Tay Johnson really impressed us when we got out there.
Did
this spring.
You're making this really hard on me for the last spot.
Yep. So now there's one spot left. Who's it down to for you?
Because I did not have Tay Johnson on my list.
So you've got
either.
3 guys on your list then left.
Yeah, I do. So the 3 guys left on my list, I have, in no particular order, Logan Thomas, Junior Tuihalamaka, and Carson Hobbs.
Man.
Those are the 3 guys I have left. All 3 of those guys should be on this list. And
but again, I think it shows how much talent's on this defense now.
Yeah, 100%.
Guys like that, a couple of those guys are going to have to be left off.
Yes, 100%. Now, I think, Carson Hobbs is making a case to be that 3rd corner. So that means he's probably going to play a lot. I think Logan Thomas could flash with his length and everything else that he brings to the table. Obviously, Junior Tuihalamaka has done it. He has started games. He has been extremely effective in games. I personally still think he's playing out of position, and I think he's going to get passed up a little bit on the depth chart by some of these other guys.
If everybody's healthy, I don't see that much of a role for him this year, unless it's other than special teams, basically.
I really like Logan Thomas. I really like him, but I am going to go Carson Hobbs here for the last spot. Because I do think he's going to end up being that 3rd corner, and I think he's going to get a lot of playing time this year.
I agree with that. And he was sitting here kind of, down in this space on my list as well. We didn't even mention Elijah Hughes, the USC defensive line transfer. And then, the guys that you mentioned there. So
Jadon Blair, somebody mentioned. I had him in my brain. I didn't write him down because I just think that room is just too deep right now, that he's going to be a factor maybe moving forward. He's going to be a huge factor on special teams this year. I just don't – you can only rotate so many guys at safety.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the issue is going to be. We have never – I don't want to say never. We have not recently seen a safety rotation of more than 3 guys. And are they even going to go 4? You know what I mean? That's a lot.
One of the questions, though, as well, and Jesse and I probably a month or so ago, he did a little whiteboard on this because of the fact that safety room is so deep. Do they put 3 safeties on the field from time to time, like they did with Jalen Elliott, Kyle Hamilton, and Alohi Gilman that year? like we saw, because obviously you had a guy like Hamilton, so it made sense to get him out there. But, again, great athlete. There's some of that with a guy like Tay Johnson as well, just the kind of athleticism that he has and the kind of space that he can cover. So, as deep as that room is, could we see that a little bit more? And like Brandon is saying, he thinks Hobbs is going to be more of a factor than Johnson. I think that all of these things are questions that like Chris Ash and Mike Mickens are probably sitting back and evaluating with spring over and going over more film and stuff like that, maybe kind of coming up with, different ideas about how they, like get in the lab, in terms of different things that they can do with different guys like that. So I think it's just really exciting because that entire secondary is just so deep right now compared to what, we were so used to seeing it be for so long. So much just brimming with talent back there.
Yeah.
Couple super chats. Thank you very much, Anthony. As always, appreciate you dropping that one in. And Sean Kelly says he is ready for football season. Great show today. Appreciate that one as well, Sean Kelly. Good stuff. So nice. I'll go through the list one more time, 1 through 20, since we finished it up. And our top 20 Notre Dame defensive players, Leonard Moore at the top of the list at number 1, followed by Drake Bowen, Kingston Viliamu Asa, Adon Schuler, Boubacar Traore at number 5, and then 6 through 10, Bryce Young, Jordan Botelho, Christian Gray, Jalen Sneed, Josh Burnham. 11 through 15, Devontae Smith, Jaden Osbury, Jalen Stroman, Gabe Rubio, Jason Onye, and then 16 through 20, Donovan Heinisch, Jared Dawson, Luke Talich, Tay Johnson, Carson Hobbs. I think that's a pretty good list myself.
I respect the work. I'm not moving anybody. Is there anybody that you want to move?
I don't think I'm going to move anybody either.
Nice.
I think there's just a lot of quality from top to bottom on that list.
Salty, that's a terrible joke, but it's like a dad joke, and I'm laughing at it. So
my God,
I'm not even going to bring it up because I feel like it's like fringing on the
there's always one, and it's usually Salty.
But it's a funny joke. It's just so stupid. I love it. Wow. Oh, anyway. All right. Sorry for the audio listeners on that one, but it's in the chat on the video. So,
yep.
But yes, the bottom line is this defense is stacked, and we have left guys off that we want to put on this list because they are going to contribute to this defense. This defense is absolutely stacked, which is why we're very excited about 2025.
Mm-hmm. Anthony wants to know if we'll revisit these lists at the end of the year. I mean, we can do that. We can even revisit them at the end of training camp.
Seriously,
for that matter,
because there may be movement. Yeah. Maybe Dawson moves up the list for me and you. Maybe Onye moves up the list. Like there's definite possibilities, of movement for sure.
Yep.
For sure.
Exactly. All right. So there it is. 1 through 20 on the defensive side. We did the offensive side last week. Good couple of lists that we put together there for rankings for Notre Dame's offense and defense. With that, Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's go. Monday rapid fire, starting off the week. A little RF. Let's do this.
This was telling you what, it's getting a little bit tougher.
Well,
to put together these rapid fires in May.
I'm very passionate about one of the questions, so
I'm sure you are. I'm
very
sure you
excited.
Which one it is going to be, might throw everybody else for a loop there. Fill in the blank. After Notre Dame picked up commitments for its 2026 class in back-to-back days with linebacker Jacob Clapper and then Javion Osborne, who is ranked as high as the number 6 running back in the nation. Any concerns you had after losing Chad Bowden to Southern Cal are blank.
They've been disintegrated for a while. And when it initially happened, I was very worried, to be perfectly honest with you. I thought his departure was one of the worst, quote unquote, portal jumps that Notre Dame could have gotten. Like I was very, very upset about it. But then he went all scorched earth against Notre Dame. And it was like, you know what? Enjoy the West Coast, man. Like I was over it pretty quickly.
And don't let it hit it in the door while you're out there.
Seriously, man. Don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you.
There you go. Yeah.
Like I was totally fine with it at that point. And the results that are happening without him here, I mean, Notre Dame hasn't lost a step. And I am in no way saying that he didn't set up, the foundation and do all the things, because him being at Notre Dame was massive. It was huge. He did so much good at Notre Dame. It's just as soon as he got out the door, it's like he forgot what got him there. And that kind of made me mad. And so now Notre Dame is doing just fine without him. And I'm cool with it. So I have no ill will or no ill-gotten gains at this point. Like, enjoy being a Trojan.
I agree with what USMA 87 is saying. He says, feels like recruiting is shooting higher, not taking numbers just to drop them later. I mean, they're going after and getting high quality guys on the defensive, like look at the defensive ends that they got. Look at this running back, obviously, that they, that they just got the commitment from in Osborne. And like, I could not be less concerned at this point after seeing. Now, granted, there was kind of that gap where it was like, is anything actually going to happen? And there was a transition period, obviously, as they were filling those positions and that kind of stuff. But they're hitting it hard, man. Like a bunch of 4-stars who have committed since he left. Like I realize, when you look at the class recruiting rankings and stuff like that, his class is obviously still considered pretty high out there at USC. We've seen Notre Dame ranked number 1 at different points when he was still here, and they didn't quite finish with that ranking, because I think a lot of their ranking right now has more to do with just numbers.
Absolutely. Because you get points for every kid that, commits, and they've got literally twice as many kids in their recruiting class as Notre Dame does. So yeah, they've got more points. Not by many though.
Right.
By the way, it's not by much.
Yep. And they are nailing it. And, again, like you lose a running back coach like Dela McCullough as well, and you're concerned about that, the way he recruited that room and the way he put that room together. And then you just get, obviously Sider comes in and you're going to, you get this dude who is just put together.
Oh, yeah.
Osborne,
seriously.
Like 5'10", 200 pounds. That is a man's body right now, ready to go.
You're not kidding.
He is put together.
Man.
So my concerns are zero. Like they are kicking it right now. And I think that there's a case that they have actually taken their recruiting to another level. As great as Chad Bowden was when he was here, I definitely think there's a case that they have taken it to another level. Maybe it's a more congruent operation now that he's gone. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
like not sitting on the inside of that room, but on the outside, it sure looks like things are going pretty well.
I agree. I completely agree. And again, he set the foundation, and it's, to be honest with you, it's a similar conversation with kind of, the Brian Kelly and the Chad, like it's a similar conversation for me. It's like, I am willing to give Brian Kelly a lot of credit for getting Notre Dame up to where they were.
Yeah.
And I give Chad Bowden a lot of credit for getting the recruiting operation. Yes, Marcus Freeman had a lot to do with bringing in certain guys, no doubt about it. But he was in charge of that whole operation, and he did a really good job. I can still hate him now, because of what he's saying and what he's doing,
All the poaching. And apparently he's out there podcasting a lot. I didn't realize that.
God.
Apparently he's out there.
He's not. I'll just leave it at he's not exactly playing by all the rules either. So
no, does not sound like it.
Yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Interesting story that I saw this morning popped up over the weekend. After former Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers slid to the 7th round of the NFL draft, many have wondered why he didn't hit the transfer portal and stay in college for another year. There was talk about some schools were offering him, you heard these numbers like $6 million being floated out there.
Crazy.
When, there was talk about Quinn Ewers hitting the transfer portal. Well, Ewers' agent told ESPN's Todd Archer that if Ewers was going to transfer, he would have had to make that decision while Texas was still playing in the college football playoff. Here's what the agent, Ron Slavin, told ESPN. This is where it gets interesting here. Quote, "You can ask those questions, but the reality of it is the way the portal schedule is set, it was not possible for Quinn because he didn't want to be talked to about the portal. When they beat Arizona State on January 1st, the next game was January 10th. If he was going to commit to Miami or Notre Dame, he's going to do that while his team's got a playoff game in a week, and his teammates are going to look at him like, you're going to another school if we lose? You can't do that, end quote. Okay, Vince, so at the very least, the agent is suggesting that Notre Dame and Miami were the two top suitors in pursuit of Quinn Ewers at that time in January, while obviously Texas was still in the college football playoff, while Notre Dame was still in the college football playoff. So what do you think of this?
I think that his agent is 50% full of crap, number one, and 50% probably telling the truth. Look, I understand. I'm going to answer this two different ways. So the first way is I totally get, because of where the transfer portal is, it puts guys who are still in the who are still in the playoff in a very awkward, very awful situation. There's no doubt about it. Mm-hmm. And I totally understand where Quinn and his agent, like, I get everything that he just said. Totally get that. He could have, he's got to have his degree by now. I would assume he's been at Texas for a while. So you can graduate transfer anytime. You don't have to hit the portal window. So that would be my one pushback. Like, if you're going to graduate, if you have your degree, you could have jumped in at any point. But we'll just
and you're in the playoff, so there's an extension on
that good
any
point.
Team that's in the playoff. So,
Great point.
Great point.
So, there's a little bit of pushback there. I understand you don't want to jump in the portal as you're preparing to play a game. Like, I get that. As the starting quarterback, that's a terrible look. Like, I get that. But I do feel like there was ways around it. Okay. Now, the Notre Dame part. There is zero chance that Notre Dame was recruiting Quinn Ewers. Zero.
I agree.
It didn't happen. It did not happen.
And I think if anything, just like this agent is just, like flippantly throwing all this out there right now, I think if anything, the agent may have contacted Notre Dame in an attempt to, like drive up the price, say Miami was actually involved in this, like drive up the price to Miami or Oregon or, whoever it happened to be. So I'm not saying that there, that there wouldn't have been contact, but I completely agree. Like, in terms of Notre Dame's interest in Quinn Ewers, based on everything that we have seen and heard, like going way back, Notre Dame was not interested in going to the transfer portal for a third straight year. And especially if $6 million or even $5 million was the price tag.
No chance.
Yeah.
No chance.
I think that this was the agent doing his job and just spreading this all over the place.
And I don't have a problem with that, to be perfectly honest with you. Agent can say whatever they want to help their client. I don't have any issue with that. But he wasn't coming to Notre Dame. Like, that was not going to happen. We dispelled that rumor back when it was going on in the first place, and we're going to dispel it now. Sources say Notre Dame had zero interest in going to the portal, let alone going for Quinn Ewers and paying $6 million. It was just not going to happen. Right. And if you need more proof that that's the case, just look at what happened this spring with Notre Dame and who is still in the quarterback battle, because that's who they have their faith in.
Right.
And they were on the roster already. So,
right.
Yeah, it wasn't going to happen.
And everyone was worried about who was going to hit the transfer portal. If you would have brought in Quinn Ewers, there's a chance that all three of the Kenny Minchie, Steve Angeli, and CJ Carr would have hit the transfer portal if you brought in Quinn Ewers.
And
or any other transfer.
Yeah. You're not doing yourself the service that you think you are by bringing somebody in. And Notre Dame knew that. Marcus Freeman is not an idiot. He's not going to bring in yet another transfer person or transfer quarterback to that room because of that exact reason. Yes, he's going to do whatever he can to win. He thinks he's got the quarterback on the roster to win for him now. And he flat out said that in his press conference. Like, we believe our next starting quarterback is on the roster. So I do believe that probably the agent reached out or somebody that's close to the program or whatever, but the program was never interested. That's for sure.
Like Andrew was saying that ESPN said Notre Dame and Ewers spoke during their draft coverage. She says he knows someone close to the program who said Milroe had discussions with Notre Dame. Again, is it Ewers and Milroe, or is it their agents? I think it's the latter.
Correct.
Personally. And there's like your representation, again, because it's the agent's job to reach out and make these kind of contacts and gauge interest. That kind of stuff happens all the time, just like the Olivia Miles TCU stuff.
Right.
That's like the agent was doing their job by going out and finding a landing spot. So,
I mean, and what's
so I'm not saying that nobody ever talked to anybody.
So what's the definition of discussions?
And there's also a difference between talking and actual interest.
Like, a discussion with Notre Dame. So does that mean they called Notre Dame and somebody in the recruiting office talked to the guy for a minute? Is that a discussion with Notre Dame? You know what I mean? Like the coaching staff, and I know this for a fact, they had no interest in going to the portal. None.
Right.
So again, if somebody in the building had a conversation with an agent, that's nothing. Sorry.
Right. Yeah, and like Anthony says, how many times does Freeman have to say the starting quarterback is currently on the roster? I mean, literally, I think that was asked right after the USC game, if I'm not mistaken.
It was, and he was very clear.
Yeah, about what was going to happen in terms of it was either right.
That's when
right around that time period. Anyway.
That's when the portal was opening.
Exactly.
And so he had to address it, and he's like, "Our starting quarterback is on the roster." I mean, still believe that, by the way. Tyler Buckner.
The Baltimore Ravens have exercised the 5th-year option on Kyle Hamilton. Notre Dame fans frequently like to say Hamilton was disrespected and overlooked in the NFL draft process. Do you buy or sell Hamilton disrespect during said draft process, Vince?
He went with the 14th overall pick.
See, this is what I keep coming back to. How are you disrespected when you went in the top half of the first round of the NFL draft?
I don't know how you were disrespected.
That's like a huge okay, he didn't go number 10, he went 14th. I don't get, you just can't keep living your life like a perpetual redheaded stepchild,
Right.
Why do people say that he was disrespected? Because, people evaluated him and, maybe didn't say a couple glowing things about him, like they nitpicked him a little bit. I don't get this, Vince. But I keep seeing it. I keep seeing it, just within the last week, I've seen it some more. I don't get it.
By the way, he was also the first safety taken in the draft, in case anybody was curious.
Michael says because he should have been top 5 again. So he fell 9 spots. Who cares?
I'm sorry. If he was top 5, that means he would have either gone to here are the top 5 draft picks and where they went: the Jaguars, the Lions, the Texans, the Jets, or the Giants. So which team? I think the answer is the Lions.
Michael's mad because the Giants had the 5th pick, and he's a Giants fan, and he wishes he had Kyle Hamilton.
Let me tell you.
What was it? Kayvon Thibodeau? Is that who went number 5?
Yes, it was.
Yeah,
it was. So are you telling me that the Giants would have been better if Kyle Hamilton was at safety? Their issues are well beyond that.
I'd sure as hell rather have Kyle Hamilton.
I get it.
But
I get it.
Thibodeau's been okay, but yeah.
Going to the team that he went to worked out pretty stinking well for Kyle Hamilton. I'll say that. So
Michael is in on that, Vince.
Yeah, okay. So there you go. He just wanted a guy to root for. There's a point where you can feel disrespected if you're Kyle Hamilton, and that's fine if that's the chip on his shoulder that he plays with. At the end of the day, he went to a pretty solid situation in Baltimore.
And it's not like you can even say every NFL team passed on him at least once. 13 teams passed on him.
And not even that many because
pretty well.
Because the Lions picked twice. And the Jets picked twice. So it was 10 teams or 11 teams.
Okay, there you go. That's right. The Jets had 2 picks.
And the Giants picked twice. So
I mean, that's what you should really be mad about, Michael Hahn, because the Giants, with all these multiple first-round picks, and they're still no better than what they are right now. That's probably why he's mad, because
That's right.
Well, we could stink, but at least we'd have Kyle Hamilton.
Oh, my goodness. That's fantastic. They went Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal, the offensive tackle from Alabama. So there you go. That's hilarious. I'm sorry. You go 14th overall. You didn't get disrespected.
I can't cry for you.
No, nope. Yeah. Sorry. And he's going to make out like a band of the year from now when he gets to sign his free agent deal, whether that's with Baltimore or someplace else. He will get a second contract in the NFL, and he will be swimming in the money. So
yeah, he's going to be.
It'll be fine.
He's going to be rolling in some bank here. Like he's already sitting on a pretty nice stack, but it's going to be even bigger. You know, like you said, they pick up the 5th-year option, and then in the meantime, he's going to get the big, huge second contract after that.
I'm very curious to see what he makes. He signed a 4-year, $16.5 million contract. So I think he's doing okay.
So Michigan is going the self-imposed suspension route with head coach Sherrone Moore by suspending him for 2 games this season for the Connor Stallions sign stealing scandal. Big deal, little deal, no deal, Vince.
Unfortunately, at the moment, it's probably a little deal. They deserve more than the self-imposed 2-game suspension or whatever they're going to give, because it's probably going to be games of their choice. And it'll probably be New Mexico and Central Michigan are the 2 that they'll do. I guarantee you Sherrone Moore will be on the sidelines when Michigan goes to Oklahoma on September 5th or 6th. So it's a slap on the wrist at best. They're trying to avoid anything worse from the NCAA. If I'm the NCAA, I'm like, okay, great, you just did that. Here's the book of things that we're going to do now.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's a little deal.
Yeah, I think it's a relatively little deal as well. It is interesting that, Michigan is going the route of picking which games that they're going to selectively picking which games they're going to suspend him for. It's going to be weeks 3 and 4 against Central Michigan and Nebraska.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And that means he's going to get to coach weeks 1 and 2 against New Mexico. And then that Oklahoma game that you mentioned, he's an Oklahoma alum, actually. Found that out.
Oh, there you go.
So I think that's why, like if you want to give any, benefit of the doubt or whatever, they at least are like, he's an Oklahoma alum in the games at Oklahoma. So they're going to let him coach that game. It feels like you should have just done this last year when you were having an 8-win season,
right?
Just done it at that point
when the writing was on the wall that you're not good.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like Andre says, does anybody really even care anymore?
That's the problem. I wish they did.
So far down the road.
They cared a lot when it was all going down. They really did. And that's one of the problems with the NCAA when they do their investigations. They take years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Fill in the blank. When you think of Michigan football, blank is the first thing you think of.
My hatred, the just absolute hatred for that football program.
Really curious to see what yours was going to be.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing like specific, like a moment in time or anything like that I think of when it comes to Michigan. Obviously I've been there before. I've been on campus. My brother-in-law graduated from there. I was in the area when he graduated. Did not go. I did not attend. I elected to stay home with the kids in the hotel room, where my kids were very little at the time.
Weak.
It was not going to go sit through that because it was in the stadium. It was in the football stadium.
Oh, really?
And it was raining. And I was like, you know what?
Good call then.
Lots of reasons not to go to this one. I'll hang with the toddlers. But the bottom line is I just hate them. So I just do not like Michigan. I respect the school itself academically, but athletically, I just can't do it.
These are good answers by Anthony and Christopher. Anthony says Rocket 1989. Christopher says Rocket running another kickoff back for a touchdown. That was a rainy day as well. Brian says Bo Schembechler. Werewolf says the smell. See, the smell is what I think of when I think of USC and the Coliseum. Like if anyone's been on that the side of the Coliseum that the press box is on outside. I mean, just picture, just think urinal cake. That's what the Coliseum smells like, is a big urinal cake. Basically.
Oh, that's awful. So to answer the question, honestly, what I do think of when I think of Michigan is there's just the stupid helmet. Like I can't, like, to their credit, you associate that helmet with Michigan, right? Like, so to their credit, like it's Michigan. I hate it so much. There's, local teams here that do it sometimes. There's a bunch of Michigan, obviously, that do it. It is very close for me. The helmet from Michigan and the stupid candy cane pants from IU. Like, those are very close for me on the hatred scale. So, yeah.
To what Christopher and Anthony said, that kind of went out, like, if you would say Michigan, like, that was for a long time typically what I would think of would be like the 2 rocket kickoff returns, the wet AstroTurf and all that kind of stuff for a long time. Honestly, what I think of now is cheating, like liars. Tainted, to me, it's a tainted national championship, regardless of what anybody says, even though in the big picture, obviously, again, going back to what we're talking about with Sharon Moore being suspended, it's like, it's a little deal because nobody cares about the fact that they cheated the way they do. Oh, everybody steals signs. Well, not with video cameras like in the stands, that's actually literally against the rules. So, like, cheating is what I've come to think of when I think of Michigan football.
Love it
these days. So
love it.
I had a feeling you might like that one.
Christopher Galloway, he said, we took CJ and they hate it. Well, if you ask them, CJ's terrible. So
right. Oh, we didn't want him.
You didn't want him anyway. Right. I can't wait to see them eat those words.
Yeah. I saw his brother was getting some offers from, I think, like maybe Wake Forest or something.
Okay.
Like that.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So since we're talking about Michigan, let's take a look at the 2025 schedule, and we're going to do our new favorite game. We're going to guess the FanDuel over-under season win total for the Wolverines. So Jesse prefers like going through one by one and doing the old, that's a win, it's a loss.
That's a win. I do that to a degree, but then I just kind of like come up with a number that makes sense. You know what I mean? So I mean, I do go through the schedule and think, okay, that's a win. I do that in my head. It's a fantastic impression, by the way, of your son. I do that, but then you also have to understand who you're talking about, like program wise, what you think people will bet on, like you know what I mean? Like what a good number actually is. You have to kind of do a big picture look too.
True. So, very true. Okay, so they start off with New Mexico.
Yep.
I don't think anyone's probably too worried about that one. Then they go to Oklahoma.
It's going to be tough.
And then you got Central Michigan. Yeah, everyone's expecting Oklahoma to be better this year. And then you got Central Michigan. Then they go to Nebraska. What's Nebraska going to be? Wisconsin, looking for a big bounce back. They go to USC in October. Then Washington, at Michigan State, Purdue, at Northwestern, at Maryland, and then, of course, they close against Ohio State. That's a very manageable schedule that they've got.
It is.
They won 8 games last year.
Yep, they did, yeah.
Go ahead. You were going to say something.
And it was a disappointment.
Uh-huh.
I am somewhere between 7.5 and 8.5 with my thought process here. Everybody's high on their quarterback. I think there's a lot of hype surrounding Michigan right now. So I think I want to say 7.5. I think it's going to be 8.5.
Okay. When I looked at it, 8.5 was the first number that popped into my head.
Okay.
It's popped in my head a lot, it seems like.
Oh,
we've done these, but
I think we're both right there.
I haven't always gone with my first instinct. I actually, like I said, 8.5 was the first number that popped into my head. And then, what's that?
Are you upping it? Are you going higher?
Well, after 8.5, I was like, man, I look at that schedule. Is 9.5 realistic? I think that might be a shade too high, though.
Yeah, I just feel like this is not a 10-win Michigan team.
Yeah. I like 8.5. I like 8.5 as the number.
That's where I'm at too.
You're going with?
Yeah, because I want it to be 7.5, but I think because it's Michigan, because there's a lot of hype surrounding the freshman Underwood, at quarterback, even though I don't agree, I just think it's going to be 8.5.
Tom is saying 10-2, but very fraudulent. See, and that's like when I look
10-2,
at that schedule.
That's a great season. Sharon Moore is signing an extension if he gets to 10-2, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the toughest game on the schedule is the defending national champion that they beat last year.
I know.
So that's why I was like, could it be 9.5?
The fact that they got 8 wins last year with a win over Ohio State, like they needed that win to get to 8 wins.
Okay, so we're both locked in. You're going 8.5?
8.5.
I'm going 8.5. I'm about to open it up and see what the number is. This is Michigan's official FanDuel season over/under win total. 8.5.
We're getting good at this, man.
I finally got one.
You didn't get one with Jesse?
I didn't talk myself out of it. No, I missed with Jesse last week as well. I think Jesse got his. Who did we do? I think we did Arizona State because you and I did Indiana, and I think the next day Jesse and I did Arizona State.
Okay.
And I think I went. See, I think 8.5 was the number, and I think I talked myself into 9.5 on that one. So I'm glad I held it at 8.5 on this one. So.
It's going to be – there's a lot of – I will say this. There are a lot of toss-up games, in my opinion, on this schedule for Michigan. And, if they can win those games, then they're going to have a successful season. I just don't have a whole lot of faith that they're going to win every single toss-up game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think, obviously, as we move into the season and we start seeing how they're playing and things like that, I think those will come into a little bit more focus and we'll be able to see. But I think right now – 8.5. If they can win 9 games, if somebody's going to take the over on the 8.5, that's a hell of a season for Michigan.
I think so too.
In my opinion, I really do. Yep. So,
Vince, Ross Tucker is the NFL Stadium food guy. Do you know who Ross Tucker is?
I don't, but I want his job.
Before? He does. I believe he does some Westwood One radio and like some other, like he'll do some analysis. He fills in for Dan Patrick from time to time. He does some other stuff. He was on NFL Network last week. And on his social media, every press box he goes to, he takes video of the spread in the press box and he ranks the food spreads on his social media accounts. So on Good Morning Football last week, Ross Tucker said, mac and cheese is to be eaten as a condiment, not on its own. So, Vince, I ask you, what do you have to say to this?
Is he saying like a side item or like ketchup?
I think he meant more like a side item.
Okay.
I think he misspoke a little bit by saying condiment, but yeah.
First of all, he could not be any more dead wrong on any topic on the planet than this one right here. A well-made baked mac and cheese is absolutely the main dish. It is not a side dish. That is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. It is egregious on a lot of levels. I know as soon as you heard him say that, you thought of me.
I did. I absolutely. That's why this question is here, and I've been waiting for you since he said it.
Yeah. This is ridiculous. I will eat solo mac and cheese.
You will.
Baked mac and cheese. Like we're talking.
It don't have to be good. I can tell you that.
Okay, that may even be true.
I've seen you put it down.
I love me some mac and cheese. It is not a side dish. It is a main dish. And so a lot of times in the press box, they'll have the baked mac and cheese and they'll have like the pulled pork. That kind of a deal, right?
Right.
The pulled pork is the side item, folks. In my eyes, in my world, that is the side item.
I've seen Vince do it at the national championship game in Atlanta. Speaking of pulled pork and mac and cheese, they had both. It was a beautiful spread. It smelled delightful. And so I sit down and I'm like, how much barbecue can I fit on this freaking plate? And I'm like, got this and I got my my sauce, and it's like, there's a little bit of room. Let's try to squeeze in a little mac and cheese. Vince literally has the full size plate, all mac and cheese. That nothing but mac and cheese on that. It's like, don't you want a little bit of protein with that, my friend? No protein for Vince.
Not
all
necessary.
Carbs and sloppy cheese. That's all he did. And I think you did the exact same thing at the Blue Gold game, if I'm not mistaken. They had like a pulled chicken and pulled pork kind of thing out there, and it was just all mac and cheese.
Listen, it's not a secret to you that I am a huge fan of the mac and cheese.
I know.
I have 5 children, okay? And mac and cheese happens in our house quite a bit. And there's usually, surprisingly, leftovers because there's like, one kid eats this, one kid eats this, whatever. So there's like mac and cheese. That is like, I'll open the fridge and I'll see that Tupperware full of mac and cheese right to the microwave.
So what is, I'm guessing it's probably some kind of boxed mac and cheese that you're going with in the home. Are you going with the Kraft mac and cheese, or you like Velveeta shells and cheese?
It actually varies. We do both. We are a split household. Okay. I personally like the Velveeta shells and cheese if we're going box. But I'll have both, no doubt about it. But yeah, the baked is the best. But obviously there's more.
That's like holiday mac and cheese. Like when you're going to go full fancy and breadcrumbs and all that kind of stuff.
Correct. That's the best. There's no doubt about it. And I do want to. Salty Virginia peanuts is conceptually, mac and cheese is not any different than fettuccine Alfredo. Noodles and cheese, of course, it can be a main dish. My favorite meal ever, fettuccine Alfredo. That's my go-to favorite meal.
Back when I was a young man, I loved a good fettuccine Alfredo. And this was before I realized how, it's basically.
Oh, it's terrible for you.
Yeah. It's like butter and Parmesan and it's like, it's delicious. Yeah. But it's like,
I know
like this don't like it so much.
You're not wrong. And I don't eat it that often, but yes, it is my favorite.
I do like actually a little, like some mac and cheese, like some pulled pork, a little barbecue sauce on top, like mix it up a little bit. That's like a good call. Okay. You've seen my plates though, like compared to yours. Mine is like 90% protein.
Yes.
And maybe a little bit of carb, but Vince is like completely flipped.
And I'm that weird guy who I don't like my food touching and stuff like that. So I just go with the one thing and let's roll.
Yeah. And see, my wife is the same way. Like she hates holidays because of all the, everyone. But me, it's like, oh, I love my turkey on top of my stuffing and everything, gravy and cranberry sauce, and throw a little sweet potato in there as well.
Oh, my goodness gracious!
We were watching this reality show last week, and there was this guy making the mac and cheese. The wife was at work, and so it was like it was 90 Day Fiance. I don't know if you've ever seen.
I know the concept.
So it was like a guy from another country in America, and it's like the stepkid is home and he wanted mac and cheese for breakfast.
Whoa.
So the guy starts making the Kraft mac and cheese on the stovetop, and the water in the and the noodles are still boiling, and he starts dumping in the powder.
Oh boy.
And it was basically like mac and cheese soup. The kid couldn't stand it.
I bet.
The guy was like, in my country, you don't get the mac and cheese together. You buy the mac and you buy the cheese. So he had never made the instant macaroni and cheese version together.
That's hilarious. That's really funny. That is really funny. Now, I will say my favorite fettuccine Alfredo, since everybody's kind of throwing their stuff in there. Fettuccine Alfredo. I like the seafood fettuccine Alfredo with some shrimp and scallops in there.
Yeah.
That's my go-to.
My daughter actually just got that. They were in Indy a week or so ago, and they went to Cheesecake Factory.
Oh yeah.
And she got the shrimp Alfredo.
Nice. Yeah. See, that's good stuff right there. And Tommy's absolutely correct. I eat like a child. There's no I have been known to get some chicken fingers and fries at times. Not often, but I a good chicken finger and fry, man. Like if it's a good piece of chicken, like deep, like okay, let's roll, man. I'm good with that. I eat like a child. It's all good though.
Hey, I would if I could, but
I mean, look at me.
If yeah. You're not as bad off as you think you are. Trust me.
I appreciate it. I'll take that.
In general, you wouldn't if I ate like you for a month, I would probably weigh 250 pounds. No lie. And you just fluctuate probably within an 8-pound range or something like that.
I never get too high, never get too low. It's whatever.
Yeah.
I've made that decision that I'm going to enjoy food like that. That was a conscious decision,
I wish portion control is what I've found out is I've got
no willpower. I have no willpower whatsoever.
Tough, man. It's
It is hard, man. It's so hard. Everybody tells me these diets that they're on and everything. I'm like, you must be miserable.
Seriously. All right, we'll wrap it up with the mac and cheese talk here at the end. All right, great stuff as always. Vince is going to be back in tomorrow, and so tomorrow, just so everybody knows right now, we'll get this up front. We've got a Miami guest on the show. And yes, it will be pre-recorded. I, as always, gave him the option to do it live at 5, but he couldn't do it because he's got kids and he's got to pick them up or something. Kids messing everything up.
Seriously.
So we are recording it, but Vince is on a time crunch tomorrow.
Yep.
So we're actually going to start the show tomorrow with rapid fire, and then we'll have the Miami interview after that. We'll talk a little Carson Beck, obviously, Mario Cristobal, and all that kind of good stuff. So that's coming up on tomorrow's show. We begin with rapid fire, and then we'll have the guest after that.
We'll flip a Rooski, see if everybody's on their toes.
Christopher wants to know if you're going to the Miami game. We haven't talked about it.
We really haven't. I mean, there's no good reason outside of it's probably really expensive for me not to go because that is the week before Hillsdale has their first game.
Oh, okay.
So they have their first game on the bye week for Notre Dame. So there you go. So there's really no good reason for me not to go. But
that helps a little bit.
I'm sure that Brian will be attending, and there's a good chance you will be attending, and so therefore I will not be attending. But if I'm asked to go by the boss, I will be like, yeah, I'll definitely go. See you in Miami, but we'll see.
All right. Well, hit that like button before you leave. We appreciate you being here as always, and we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.
See you, everybody.